How's it going, guys? It's Brian, debuting my first video on this channel. I decided to start a new channel solely for airsoft instead of just mixing automotive with airsoft and people getting confused. So without further ado, in front of us today we have the Classic Army M249 SPW or MK46. I saw this on Airsoft GI and I jumped on it. I got a new job, so I'm making a little more money so I can play with my money a little bit more as far as disposable income. Anyway, I saw this and I jumped on it. I have wanted a Classic Army M249 for the longest time, and they've been sold out for almost, I want to say, a decade, or at least I haven't seen any in stock. Back in the day, Classic Army was, the gold standard for LMGs, specifically M249s. And since then, A&K has come out with one, Cybergun/SEMA came out with one, G&P has started getting into it, and Classic Army just kind of fell by the wayside for a variety of reasons, which I won't get into, but it seems like they're back, so I figured, you know what, let's pick this up and see how it performs and what the quality is like. Haven't fielded it yet, but I will next weekend. And I was curious because, again, it's a Classic Army, and it was about $350. Meanwhile, Evic's charging about $500 some for the A&K version, which I found interesting because, my age is showing a little bit here. Back in the day, Classic Army was the gold standard as far as, a premium AEG went, and A&K was kind of the budget brand. But is there a reason? Well, let's look more into this and find out. So as I mentioned earlier, Classic Army was kind of the gold standard as far as quality went regarding M249s back in the day. They made one of the best M249s that you could buy for sub $500. And it's been a long time since I've seen them, mass produce another M249 in any variant. So I was curious how it was regarding the build quality on the externals. And I'll get into that later, but let's just do a quick overview of the gun. So this is the MK46, which is the Special Forces version of the M249 or the Mini-Me, whatever you want to call it. And the notable features are that it has an M4 style stock, which you really can't see because I have a battery bag on there. This rail system up on the top that's on the, kind of covering the barrel. And that's really it. And it has a shorter barrel overall, but that's really it. It's designed to be as modular as possible and customizable as possible. I've done a few things like add some dummy rounds to the feed tray. I have added a, basic Amazon special red dot, Amazon special flashlight. That's really it. Because it's a saw, it functions on semi and full. So you have your not safe and safe. That's it. I have the box mag set up on here. It's a Classic Army nutsack box mag. Everything is mostly metal that should be, upper receiver's metal. It has a rail on the top, or upper feed tray, is metal, and it has a rail on the top. Lower receiver's metal. The wrist in the front is metal. Barrel's metal. Flash hider's metal. Front sight's metal. Bipod's metal. Pistol grip is plastic, I believe. It feels cold. I don't know. But overall, aesthetically, it looks very, very nice. Oh, and the stock is plastic. I'll just swing over here real quick so you can kind of see it. It's a crane style stock, and I'm not wild about it, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I have a battery bag hooked up to it to put a giant brick 9.6 40 milliamp 4000 milliamp battery in there, just because you need a large battery for an LMG if you don't want to be swapping out batteries all the time, and then just a basic sling. Excuse me. But that's basically it. So aesthetically, it looks nice. But some of the issues here are the build quality, which actually, let's pause for 1 sec. So the internals seem pretty rock solid. I'm not going to pop it open, but the gearbox inside is a saw-style gearbox, which is basically like a rectangle, if you know what I'm talking about, versus the version 2 gearbox that a lot of airsoft companies have started using in their saws. They've been trying to do this thing where they, reinforce a version 2 gearbox, and in my Cybergun featherweight M249, it did a pretty good job, but I've heard horror stories, and I've just heard a lot of people say that the brick style saw gearbox is really the best one you can use for this. So I'm happy that they included that. It shoots really well. The hop up is pretty responsive for a stock hop up, and I've got it shooting pretty well. I shot it out in my backyard, and I was getting 200 plus feet, which isn't bad. Now let's go on to the external build quality. So this is where I'm kind of seeing a lot of red flags. So I don't want to pop it open because it can slide out, but these buttons, you press these buttons to open and lift up the feed tray, and there was a steel piece of steel, kind of like in a U shape, that was holding this on, and it either snapped or just popped out just from opening it. I probably opened it 3 or 4 times, and the last time it popped out. So now these buttons can slide in and out of the feed tray, which I don't like because they're going to get lost. Like, they're able to still hold it down, and I can still open and close it and lock it back in. But it's just that steel piece broke off, and now it's just a liability at this point. The charging handle still works and whatnot. Also, that's fully functional on this, unlike the Cybergun, obviously. But I digress. So that was a red flag. That should not be happening right after I opened the gun up. The other red flag was that on the bottom down here, you have this rail, and it's basically like a U-mount where these rail covers are. This is a whole piece right here, independent of this upper rail. And what Classic Army did was they attached that to the frame of the gun using some weird screws that I'd never seen before. And I couldn't get them to lock. The screws strip very quickly because they're cheap plastic, or not cheap plastic. They're just cheap steel. And I was using the right Allen key, but it was just like I couldn't get torque on them. And this thing was just kind of moving back and forth. I just ultimately ended up JB welding it on because it sat right against the frame. And I was like, it's got a good pressure point. So I just let it sit against the frame, put a few drops of JB weld on each corner, and let it sit. And it's fine. It's not going anywhere. And it's not like I really need to take that off for anything regarding like repairs or maintenance. But it's just very annoying that that was a thing on a Classic Army. Again, quality control, engineering, R&D, it's all in that realm, and it's very, very sus. Lastly, I think there's one other thing that was kind of iffy. Maybe that was it. But yeah, those two things are very big red flags regarding the exterior build quality of this gun. Really not liking that. But overall, I mean, it shoots beautifully and it looks very sexy, and there's not like any creaking or play on the body or the frame. It doesn't seem like the metal is cheap. It's not cheap. It just seems like a lot of the engineering that was put into this was an afterthought as far as, practicality and maintenance. So, not really sure about that. But I'm hoping this doesn't go the way of my old Matrix BAR, where I fall in love with how it performs, but then externally it just progressively falls apart and fails. But yeah, that's really it. The only other con I have that isn't really, I guess it's in the realm of engineering, but it kind of makes sense, is the stock. So it's a collapsible stock, and I can't really do it with one hand, so I'm not going to bother. But it's a 4-position collapsible stock, crane style. You can pop the butt plate out here, and there's room for, I don't know, you could put some like stick nunchucks in there. But I would really want a larger type battery, and I use a 9.6 just because there is no MOSFET on this gun, and I don't want to use an 11.1. I feel like that might be a little overkill. Obviously, with a 9.6, you're losing some trigger response, but again, you're not shooting this in semi at all, so I'm not super worried about that. Put a 9.6 in there to up the rate of fire over a 7.2 or a 7.4, and also just because it's an NIMH battery, and I think that's going to put a little bit less wear and tear on here than an 11.1 would. And I can use a brick style battery, and the battery bag's on there. Doesn't look great, but it doesn't look like the worst thing in the world. Kind of going a little old school with that. Other than that, I'm enjoying, just kind of like fielding it around my house. Even it's very, very hefty. It's probably about 14 pounds with ammo in the box mag. So I don't know how enjoyable this would be to field on a long-term op. I went to Milsim West back in May, and I was fielding my featherweight, and that felt like really the limit at where I was at as far as what I could field around. Maybe I need to lift a little bit more, but 48 hours, I don't know if I could do it with this. But, I've got high hopes for it, and the key word there is hopes. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing disappointed me in some way, shape, or form regarding the build quality. Again, I feel like internally, the reliability seems pretty rock solid. I think they did everything right there. I'm not having any issues. My box mag, which is a Classic Army box mag, is feeding flawlessly in it for the most part. Oh, before I forget, that was the other thing. So, sorry guys, I'm spitballing, but I did want to include this. So, this is a little like spot to hold the bipod in when you have it collapsed, and it just like, it's the bipod spring tension, so it goes under here. It slides into these little like grooves here. I don't know if you can see them. There are these little grooves on this, and it springs out and holds. So it wasn't staying in there, and I couldn't figure out why. And then at first I thought it was because of where the rail ends, and the bipod couldn't get flush enough into these grooves so that it would stay. But what it was it looks like whoever assembled this gun had the holder upside down and then clamped it onto the rail system. So I flipped it over and reinstalled it, and now it's fine. But again, Classic Army is back, but it seems like they're having some issues with QC in general, because not only with this gun, but I have a large box mag on my A&K M249 over there, and the spring that connects the mag feed, it was like completely like crooked, like the coils were just completely almost like offset to one side. And I kept the box mag and just used an old mag brand spring and mag adapter, but I was like, this should not be happening with a Classic Army gun. So overall, like, I'm pleased with it, how it looks, how it performs. But as far as the build quality goes, I'm raising some eyebrows here, but we'll see. That about does it for this video. We're going on 13 minutes, so I'm gonna log off, but thank you for watching. I'll be uploading more videos in the near future, and I'll probably do some re-ups of my old videos from my old channel as well. So keep an eye out for all that. All right, guys, take care.